Imagine flying over the Atlantic Ocean at night. Below you, there is nothing but black water stretching farther than your eyes can see. No roads, no cities, no landmarks. And if something goes wrong out there may be nowhere to land. And almost no time to understand what happened. Now imagine 5 military aircraft disappearing from that ocean. No wreckage, no bodies, no clear explanation. And then, decades later, people begin telling a much bigger story. A story about a mysterious triangle in the Atlantic where ships vanish, aircraft disappear, compasses behave strangely, and entire crews seem to be swallowed by the sea. You already know its name, the Bermuda Triangle. But here is where the story gets interesting. Because the real mystery may not be what is hiding inside the Bermuda Triangle. The real mystery may be how an ordinary region of ocean became one of the most famous legends on Earth. And to understand that, we have to go back to one winter afternoon in 1945. December 5th, 1945. 5 U.S. Navy Grumman Avengers took off from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for what was supposed to be a routine training mission. There were 14 servicemen aboard the 5 aircraft. This was not an expedition into the unknown. It was a training exercise, something the crews had done before. But that afternoon, the mission took a terrifying turn. As the aircraft traveled over the Atlantic, communications between the pilots and the base became increasingly confusing. The lead instructor pilot, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, appeared uncertain about his position. The weather was deteriorating. The aircraft were running into navigation problems, and somewhere over the ocean, the 5 planes lost their way. Then came the search. Rescue aircraft were sent out to find them, but one of those aircraft never returned either. In total, 27 servicemen were lost, and neither the 5 Avengers nor the rescue aircraft was ever recovered. The official records are real, the loss is real, the tragedy is real. But the supernatural explanation, that is where the story changes. The National Archives notes that the Navy's investigation pointed toward navigational error and the difficult conditions surrounding Flight 19, not aliens, portals, or some unknown force. And yet, the disappearance became something much larger than an aviation accident. It became a legend. But where is the Bermuda Triangle? Here is something most people don't realize. There is no officially recognized Bermuda Triangle on government maps. There is no universally agreed upon boundary. The name describes a loosely defined area generally associated with the waters between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. Even the U.S. Board of Geographic Names does not recognize Bermuda Triangle as an official geographic name. So before asking what happens inside the triangle, we should ask a more basic question. How big is the triangle supposed to be? The answer changes depending on who is drawing it. And that matters. Because if the boundaries are flexible, deciding which disappearances belong to the Bermuda Triangle can become surprisingly subjective. But that still leaves us with an uncomfortable question. Why have so many stories of disappearances become connected to this particular part of the Atlantic? The ocean doesn't need a monster. The Atlantic can be brutal. The region experiences tropical storms and hurricanes. The Gulf Stream moves through the area and can produce rapidly changing conditions. The Caribbean contains countless islands, reefs, shallow areas, and complicated passages. And before modern weather forecasting, satellite tracking, GPS, and advanced navigation systems, sailors and pilots had far fewer tools to work with. Imagine trying to navigate hundreds of miles from land with limited weather information, over an ocean where a storm can change conditions faster than you can react. A mistake that would be survivable near land can become fatal in open water. And there is another problem. The ocean is enormous. When a vessel sinks in deep water, the surface can become calm again surprisingly quickly. Debris can drift. Currents can move evidence far from the original location. And searching thousands of square miles of ocean is nothing like searching a road or a city. Sometimes, the absence of wreckage doesn't require anything supernatural. It requires an enormous ocean. So why does the legend feel so convincing? Because humans are extremely good at connecting separate events. One aircraft disappears, then another ship is lost. Then someone remembers an older disappearance. Soon the incidents are grouped together. A pattern begins to form, and once a name is attached to that pattern, Bermuda Triangle, every new mystery seems to strengthen the legend. But there is a problem with this way of thinking. We usually remember the strange cases. We don't remember the thousands of ships and aircraft that cross the same region without incident. That's a classic problem in human reasoning. We notice the extraordinary, we ignore the ordinary, and the ordinary doesn't make headlines. The most famous mystery wasn't necessarily supernatural. Go back to Flight 19. The case sounds almost impossible when reduced to a few dramatic sentences. 5 planes disappear. A rescue plane disappears. Nothing is found. Mystery solved? Not quite. The surviving records tell a more complicated story. The National Archives describes Flight 19 as a tragedy involving navigation problems, deteriorating conditions, and human decision-making. At one point, Taylor was uncertain about his aircraft's position. The rescue operation also faced dangerous weather and rough seas. The Navy's conclusion was that Flight 19 was lost after becoming disoriented, while the rescue aircraft was lost because of a separate mechanical and fuel-related failure. That explanation may not be as exciting as an interdimensional portal, but reality doesn't have to be supernatural to be terrifying. Sometimes the most frightening thing in the ocean is simply this: you can be wrong about where you are, and not realize it until it's too late. What about the strange compass stories? This is another part of the Bermuda Triangle legend. People have claimed that compasses behave strangely in the region, but even this idea has a much more ordinary explanation. A compass points toward magnetic north, not necessarily geographic true north. The difference between the two is called magnetic declination, and that difference changes depending on where you are on Earth and over time. NOAA also notes that navigational issues, weather, the Gulf Stream, and difficult waters around the Caribbean can all contribute to dangerous situations in this region. So a compass behaving differently from what someone expects does not automatically mean that the laws of physics have stopped working. Sometimes, the compass is doing exactly what a compass is supposed to do. The person using it simply doesn't understand what it is indicating. And then came the hexagonal cloud theory. At one point, a new theory exploded across the internet. Satellite images appeared to show strange, almost geometric cloud formations over parts of the Atlantic. Some researchers discussed whether these formations could be associated with powerful downdrafts and sudden bursts of wind. The idea was fascinating. If intense downward air currents developed over the ocean, could they create dangerous conditions for aircraft? Could powerful winds create unusually violent waves? Could weather explain at least some of the incidents associated with the Bermuda Triangle? Possibly, but there is an important word here: possibly. The cloud theory was never a proven explanation for the entire Bermuda Triangle mystery. It became popular because it sounded like the perfect answer, but a scientific hypothesis is not the same thing as a solved mystery, and that distinction matters. So, is the Bermuda Triangle real? Yes, as a cultural legend, but not in the way movies and viral videos often portray it. There is no solid evidence that ships and aircraft disappear there because of aliens. There is no evidence of a portal to another dimension. There is no confirmed supernatural force pulling vessels beneath the ocean. And according to NOAA, there is no evidence that mysterious disappearances occur there at a higher frequency than in other large, heavily traveled areas of the ocean. That doesn't mean every disappearance has been perfectly explained. It hasn't. There are cases where investigators never recovered enough evidence to know exactly what happened. But "we don't know" and "something supernatural happened" are two completely different statements. And that may be the most important lesson hidden inside this entire legend. For generations, people have looked at the Bermuda Triangle and asked, what is hiding there? But perhaps we have been asking the wrong question. Maybe the ocean doesn't need an invisible force. Maybe it doesn't need aliens. Maybe it doesn't need a portal. Maybe a combination of weather, currents, navigation errors, mechanical failures, human decisions, and the sheer size of the Atlantic is enough to create tragedies that are incredibly difficult to reconstruct decades later. And once those tragedies were collected into one story, the legend became bigger than the evidence. Flight 19 was real. The missing aircraft were real. The lives lost were real. The unanswered questions were real. But the supernatural Bermuda Triangle? That part belongs to the story humans created around the facts. And perhaps that is what makes this mystery so fascinating. Because sometimes, the most powerful mystery isn't the one we can't explain. It's the one we thought needed an extraordinary explanation in the first place.